The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Shalom and welcome to the SINagoguge. This is a podcast for consenting adults for information, education, and entertainment on BDSM, sexuality, and all things related. If you're not a legal, enthusiastically consenting adult, then
pick up the needle, press pause, or turn the radio off.
For those who remain, now might be a good time to switch to your headphones.
Welcome to the SINagoguge. I am your host, and they call me the Rabbi.
Pretty fly for a rabbi.
I put the sin in synagogue, and I am a cisgender, ambimorous, gynesexual, sadistic, bratty daddy doll. Sex therapist by day, kink educator by night, and in both these roles, I help people make their kink a religious experience. While I am a mental health professional, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a replacement for therapy. Seek out the assistance of a trained professional for help with your specific situation. Hosting with me today is my partner, my ADHD squirrel wrangler, my submissive, my brat, my pony, or just my little pony.
Aww.
The Gilbert to my Sullivan. Little bit. This is episode number 28, and with us today is FoxxyLeigh to talk about Furries, a cultural revolution in kink. This is an exploration into how the furry community has created unique spaces for exploring kink, how the community rose from small room parties to massive conventions. The trials and tribulations parallel much of kink history and the scrutiny furries have come under. But first, a word from our sponsor. With over 15 years of experience in the lifestyle, FoxxyLeigh has devoted themselves to education and outreach for younger generations and the disenfranchised. They are a firm supporter of LGBT rights, a queer, gender-fluid, polybog witch with a talented tongue made to tickle more than your brain. Thank you for being here in the SINagoguge. Let's talk about Furries, a cultural revolution in kink.
Welcome, welcome.
So let's start with the most basic.
Shalom in your home.
What is a furry?
Well, that is quite the place to start. When we're talking about furries, we're talking about typically an individual that feels a connection to an anthropomorphized version of themselves. This can be a person that, for whom this version of themselves is the person they wish they could be. Maybe it's a person that they feel like they exude on a daily basis, but it's more exaggerated. In some cases, it's just them, but with cute ears and a tail. In many cases, it doesn't have to be an anthropomorphized creature. It can just be a normal animal that they feel a connection to. But it is in some way a method by which an individual can better express themselves through art, media, all kinds of things. It can be incredibly freeing. And it's kind of what drew me to the topic, in all honesty, is I was never really into furry culture, but the history of it I've found to be rather fascinating, honestly. And the fact that I was at one point one of those persons that denounced furries and thought they were all degenerates and they were just gonna go around having sex with their pets. And then when I finally met a lot of furries and kind of got to know them on a personal level, I realized that they were on the same journey as I was, just trying to figure out who they were. They were just doing it differently.
Being a furry and being a pet player.
So The difference kind of comes down to personification. In a lot of cases, a furry is just a person that looks like an animal. It's like a busty fox girl or like a wolf individual. Typically, they stand on both legs and they do human activities just with an animal exterior. While pet play is usually more regressive, it's getting back down to an animalistic kind of want and desire. It's more wanting to be in touch with that animal side and what comes with that. You know, things like collars and leashes and wanting to be in the kennel and drinking from bowls and playing with balls and getting pets and scritches, which isn't to say that the two don't intersect in a lot of ways. Puppy girls and puppy boys, etc., certainly can cross over into the two. But there are distinctions to be made, and not every furry is going to be into pet play. Just as
So
every
did,
pet player isn't going to be a
furries
furry.
evolve out of pet play, or do they have a different origin?
So they have a distinctly different origin. There's an argument to be made that some of them probably came from pet play, but the origin is rather vast, honestly. If we look back at human history, a lot of animals have been anthropomorphized through cultures. This is seen in a lot of Greek culture and a lot of Chinese culture, Japanese culture. There are animals that are upright on two legs and they perform human actions. Most notably, we see a lot of this kind of funny animal style, which is what it was colloquially known as in the 1800s. Artists would depict animals doing different things like playing piano or taking a drive or playing badminton. One of the most recognizable from this time would have been Mr. Toad from The Wind in the Willows. And we see, like, especially in the 19th century, panto animals showing up on British theater stages. People dressing as animals for the delight of others. But if we're talking about the modern furry, much of that kind of was derived from post-World War II era. Because during World War II, we had a lot of popular cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Bugs Bunny, all of these anthropomorphized animals that were, taking it to the Third Reich. And you also had a lot of superhero comics and the like. And a lot of these were, very much America first and very in that vein. Post-World War II, however, we had a counterculture revolution kind of coming up through comics. And that would be comics with an X at the end, as opposed to the traditional comic books that were soon going under the Comic Code Authority from the 1950s. These were small, roughshod publications that were done in someone's basement and produced on local stands. And a lot of them took the idea of anthropomorphized animals doing things and turned it up to 11. So instead of, they're driving a car or doing whatnot, they're doing cocaine. They're fucking each other. They're doing all of these things that are just unheard of. One of the most notable coming out of the 70s would have been Fritz the Cat, made by Robert Crumb. Fritz was a philanderer. He did drugs. He was just not a great character. But for Robert Crumb himself, he created Fritz as a way of of kind of exploring this other side of him that he couldn't be, because he was a very shy individual. He was a very quiet, kind of reserved person. But when you look at his art and his comics, you would think the complete opposite. Like, this is a madman. But outside of Robert Crumb, speaking of madmen, Fritz would be incredibly popular, especially in the 70s, due to Ralph Bakshi creating the movie Fritz the Cat, which is really hard to find these days. I actually did find it. I believe it was through the Library of Congress. There's a version of it that's existent. And if you really want a snapshot of late 60s, early 70s America, there is no better way of doing that than the movie Fritz the Cat. It is so different, and there's so much in it that just it wouldn't fly. But a lot of that history comes from those revolutionary and counterculture comics and what was known then as the funny animal fandom. This notion of people are rote and whatever, people, they kind of just do whatever they want, their own thing. Why don't we show animals doing this? Why don't we show this? Because it's far more funny when an animal does it than when a human does it. It's depressing.
How did it become this thing it is today with the elaborate mascot type costumes?
So the spread of furry culture it started relatively small. It started with like APAs. And if you don't know what an APA is, it's an amateur press association. Essentially, a bunch of artists get together and they create a fan-made magazine, and they create stories and do art and whatever in it. And it's very exclusive. One of the very first ones that came out was called Voodie, Vootie. And there are small things, there are small portions of it that still exist. This came out in like 1976. And while these were coming out, the other thing that kind of contributed to this rise was was anime from Japan kind of slowly becoming more popular on the West Coast. So you had conventions that would go on, and anime could sometimes be caught on like Hawaiian television, and you could record it on a VHS or whatever you had. But the other way that you could get anime is whenever you had Japanese tourists coming to these conventions, you could connect with them, and they would trade recent anime for old American television shows. So if you want to watch the latest Dragon Ball, you got to give up some Leave It to Beaver or some My Three Sons, which I find incredibly amusing, but it's the way that it was done. It's how things like Mazinger and Astro Boy got really popular. But there was a person by the name of Mark Merlino, and he was instrumental in creating something called CFO, which was the Cartoon Fantasy Organization. So the Cartoon Fantasy Organization really was big in LA, but it also had a New York branch. And they did their advertising through fan magazines, through APAs, and these sorts of things. And it kind of was just word of mouth. The other big thing is, as time went on in the 80s, you also had BBS boards, bulletin board systems on computers on the early internet. And so there were sites set up called one of them most notably was the Tiger's Den. It was founded originally as a science fiction board, but it was abandoned by its owner, and Merlino actually took it over to discuss the funny animal fandom as it was being developed. In other places, you had artists who were drawing more sensuous-looking animals. People like Steve Galacci, who was very popular at the time. There was an entire tabletop RPG built around these anthropomorphic animals going to war and stuff like this. There was an official comic anthology called Albedo Anthropomorphic that Galachi was a part of. And one of the most notable characters that came out of Albedo was Usagi Yojimbo, the rabbit samurai that is very popular in like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and whatnot. But you also had a bunch of other things like Mux, which, depending on who you ask, Mux, they were, it was massive. Oh no, I can't remember what it stands for. It's essentially, it's a bunch of dorks that get together and role play. Essentially, it's a shared world that a bunch of people get on a PC and they actually role play like characters. Multi-user created kingdom, I think, is what it stands for. But that's up for debate. But it is essentially just a place for people to come together and make their characters and play in this world. And worlds usually have rules. And as long as you stay within the confines of those rules and you're not a dick, people will accept your character. And there are a lot of these. And oddly enough, Furry Muck, which is the biggest one, is still going on.
Wow.
That is a 30, I think it's 35 years old now. Like that is older than most people I know. Like most of the people who go to this class, that's older than them. And it astounds me every day. But, through these boards, eventually, we would have room parties at anime conventions where people would get together, they'd watch anime, and there'd also be furries among them. And so eventually these turned into furry parties where they would discuss furry animal fandom things. And eventually the name furries, I think, stuck around this time, just as a shorthand for the funny animal fandom or the furry animal fandom, whatever they were calling it at the time. In 1989, we actually saw something called Conference Zero. It was the very first furry convention. Like exclusively, this was for people who were furs. It was in Costa Mesa, California. And for the time, the attendance was impressive. They had 65 attendees over the one day that they held it, which for the advertising they did over BBS boards, through fan magazines, through Mucks and Muds.
Yeah.
That is something else. But what we see here, astoundingly, is that there were people who showed up with tails and ears, and there was even a person that showed up in a full costume. I believe it was supposed to be a fawn, but to add to that, they had a riding crop, they had thigh-high boots, and very distinct leather, like the stereotypical dominatrix kind of look. And from there, if you go back and look, you see a lot of other furries that have harnesses, like leather harnesses. They've got collars on and leashes. We're talking about people who are using this anonymity that the suit gives you to be their authentic self. Something that we talk about a lot in kink, right? Being your authentic self. And they are out here doing it. And this is around the time that a lot of us in the kink community, we're still on the back foot, it feels like, you know. The community at large is still reeling from things like Stonewall, the AIDS epidemic, just all of these horrendous things that are going on. And yet we've got this other community thriving and being authentic. Now, this didn't, of course, come with no troubles whatsoever. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. You know, you'd have a lot of people, cops would get called because they think that there's like bootlegs happening. There's sex in the foyer. There's, you know, this is clearly some kind of child sex trafficking ring or some other nonsense, just a lot of people clutching their pearls.
Sure.
And the community itself wasn't perfect, The community itself wasn't perfect. Sometimes you'd get those weirdos out there who are like, we're both in fur costumes. Let's just blow each other in the lobby of the hotel. It's like, hold on. A little bit of decorum, okay? I get it. Like, you want some wolf dick. Who doesn't? But this is not the place for it. Go back to your rooms. But that's really where a lot of it started, it started from very small, very humble beginnings of these tiny groups, and from this counterculture. And that's the big part about furries, is it's always kind of been counterculture. Which is one of the main parallels I see within Kink as well, because Kink is incredibly counterculture, and it was born from that sort of counterculture revolution that took place post-World War II.
Sure. So you mentioned people clutching their pearls. I just want to take a small side quest and give you the opportunity to, tell Joe Rogan to go fuck himself with the litter boxes in the classrooms.
Let me tell you something. I had a conversation with someone about this, about how, there were litter boxes in the classroom. And then I pointed out that no, there weren't. There was one, but it was for an actual cat. It wasn't for someone who said they were a cat. And look, I said I was fucking Optimus Prime when I was like 8. Okay? Kids say wild shit all the time, all right? Like, we say some dumbass shit, okay? I can't take an adult that says, well, my 12-year-old said they were an octopus, and I believe it. I can't take that seriously. Like, okay, cool, the kid says they're an octopus. Great. I guess you got to make sure you get some industrial strength cleaner for all the ink. I don't know what the fuck to tell you. Like, let your kid do what they want to do. Let them explore how they want to explore. Shit. But that's one of the things that fascinated me so much about furries is especially because the internet was coming up. It gave them an outlet to explore these things. It gave them an outlet to explore kink on their own.
Oh, sure.
While we were organizing through Yahoo groups and whatnot, they had entire sites built upon the idea that you could make art and tell stories and do whatever you wanted with these characters. And they were exploring kink on their own, for better and for worse. It's like a lot of us, when we didn't have someone in the community and we were kind of trying to figure things out, we did the best that we could and as safely as we could. Astoundingly, the furry community is also incredibly good at policing themselves. They are incredibly good at it. The moment that someone turns out to be a predator or someone turns out to be unsafe, they are called out and keel-hauled, essentially. It is nuts how good they are at policing themselves. They're not perfect by any stretch, but what group is?
Why do you think the furry community is so much better at that than other kink communities?
I think it's because of the amount of publicity that they've had and the amount of allegations they've had to shake because of it. So when in the 90s, especially in the 2000s, I can visually remember news reports about furry conventions, about these weird adults who want to dress as animals and talking about the dark secrets that go on, the pet auctions that happen and whatnot. But it's all consenting adults. Sure. But they were drug into the light by news outlets, by the internet. They were forced into the light. And as a result, now all of a sudden they have to be so much better at what they do. They have to be so much better at their presentation. They have to really police themselves, because there are pedophilic furries out there. It's just the nature of the game when you have a group that large.
Sure.
You know? It happens. But instead of, covering for them because, oh, that's our friend, and enclosing ranks, they expel them. Because they know they can't hide. There's no hiding. Like, they're on blast almost 24/7. But I think that by virtue of that, they're able to really police themselves. And there's no such thing as... Okay, so we joke about old guard in MS, right? We joke about it in the kink community. But the reason why it's such a joke is because it's such a problem. And I think people don't realize that it does exist. It's just not what you think it is. Mm-hmm. We think of it as some kind of exclusive club, when it's really just people covering for each other because they're friends, or they've been around for a long time and they have seniority, or they have they hold events or something like that. So because of this hierarchy that we kind of adhere to in MS and DS and kink in general, we often find ourselves unable to call out the bad behavior and get it and take care of it, because they're in a position of leadership, they're an elder in the community, or this, that, and the other, right? With furries, it's a lot different. There is no real hierarchy. No one is better than the other person because of their position or how long they've been doing this. It's just, these are people just trying to live their lives and trying to do what makes them feel good and to build a safe community. And so because of that lack of authority and that lack of structure, they are able to do it way more effectively.
Gotcha. In what other ways does the furry community parallel the kink community?
A lot of what we talked about is, that freedom of expression, that ability to be your authentic self. Because the furry community was a lot of people who were kind of on the fringes of society and were kind of just people who didn't seem to fit in. They already lived sort of alternative lifestyles. I think they fit perfectly with kink. There's the Venn diagram is nearly a complete circle. I'm not saying every kinkster is a furry, but most furries are kinksters. And it's just this intersection. And I think it's because of that freedom to express yourself and that freedom to be this person that you want to be, allows them to explore kink and allows them to be kinky. There's also the fact that, it's a relatively small group. It's not a big one. They've had their moments of infighting, just like kink has. There was a whole movement in the furry community called the Burned Furs, and this was a sort of puritanical sect that came out that said that we shouldn't have pet auctions, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. All of the lewd characters that you come out as, you shouldn't do this. And it was in response to a lot of extreme examples. So it was an understandable response, but it was just done in such a wild way that was a massive call out to people who were just trying to live their life. And it eventually, unfortunately, got adopted by more alt-right people that were kind of attached to the community, people that weren't in the community, but they thought that, furries are all degenerates who should be burned. So it got adopted by some not so great people. Eventually it died off. But, we've had the furry community has had its fair share of things that have gone wrong. Not so much to the extreme that the larger kink community has. Because let's face it, we've had Stonewall, we've had shit burned and thrown into landfills. But we've had our run-ins with Puritans and puritanical culture. We've had our run-ins with moralists, I guess you could say. The moral majority, which is the same as furries. So there's a lot of intersection there. And just the community at large, whenever we kind of come together on something, is beautiful. Also, so with a lot of kink, we talk about, there being no true way. There's no true way of being a furry either. You don't need the elaborate costume or anything like that. You don't really need anything. You just need to, an idea needs to be there, a feeling needs to be there. And I think that's what kind of makes it beautiful.
You mentioned members of the alt-right in the furry community. I remember something being a stink a few years ago about Nazi furries. My memory is the vaguest on that. Is that a thing? Am I imagining it?
You are not imagining it. Much like a lot of larger groups, you're going to find people of all walks of life in them, because you are dealing with younger people. And you're dealing with younger people who are trying to seek validation in any way they possibly can. Sometimes even the bad attention is good attention for them. So you have people who take these horrid ideologies and co-opt them for attention. And it gives them validation because now people are paying attention to them. Now people are giving them the attention they so desperately want. And, and there are people who embrace them because of this ideology that by its very nature is self-destructive. Especially if you are a furry, because you're one of the people that would be in the chambers, let's say. But I think it's because of how large the community is and how young people can often feel ostracized, that they turn to things like this to get the attention that they want. They exist, but I can say, by and large, the community has ostracized them.
As they should.
Right.
And I want to say that a lot of,
Yes.
as they should, exactly. But I also want to say that a lot of them probably at some point realized that they're clinging to an ideology that is just purely hateful, and have gone away from it in some way, shape, or form. I hear it's sort of, I akin it to how most of a lot of anti-trans people a lot of trans people that I spoke to were at some point anti-trans. And it was because of that repression and these conflicting feelings that it drove them deeper until they realized, oh, I see, I am this. Right. And they realize that, oh, okay, I just need to come out of the dark and actually accept me for who I am.
Internalized transphobia, internalized homophobia is very much a thing, and something I do deal with on a fairly regular basis in my work with my clients. Mm-hmm. But I don't understand how anybody could be a member of any kink community and have right-wing beliefs, let alone alt-right beliefs. I mean, furry Nazis sounds like a joke.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, it's we're talking about, if we're talking about kink, we're talking about the very people that would have, under the Third Reich, that would have been,
Right.
put into prisons for deviancy. We're talking about this, and it's wild to me that I have met kinksters that are far right or on that fringe.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you guys understand, like you're part of that list, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. And with furry Nazis, it's one of those things that just it's so absurd. It has to be real. Like, there's no way you can make something like that up. If you did, you're just really creative on a level that I wish I could be.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's switch topics, because I think we've given furry Nazis way more attention than they deserve.
Absolutely.
I agree.
You do have a fursona yourself.
I do. I do have a fursona. She is on my FetLife. There are two photos. One of them is done by a friend of mine who made it for my class. Whenever I told them I was doing a class on furries, they were like, "We need to do this." And the other one is made by another friend of mine in the kink community, Rebel Savant. He did an amazing job. I met him at MSC. And I approached him with $100 bill and said, please make me art of my fursona. And he graciously accepted. And so I was pleased as punch. But yeah, I do have a fursona. She is a gray, fox lady with a witch's hat and purple hair.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
So how does one go about selecting their fursona?
It varies from person to person. I think that selecting a fursona, you kind of go with what you feel like. Like what animal? Okay, what animal do you like? Like, what if you are going to create something? What do you associate yourself with in terms of animals?
Platypus.
Platypus. Fuck yeah. All right. So then you have to so then, like, what does that look like to you? Like, are they kind of alternative? Like, you sort of mesh two things together, right? You kind of incorporate a bit of yourself, but also maybe a part of yourself that you wish was better or more like, maybe you wish you were like more muscular. Like, maybe this is a jacked ass platypus, right? Like with a biker's helmet and cool sunglasses. And then, like, how much of the animal do you want them to have? Do you just want them to be animalistic in the face and the rest of them is kind of humanoid? Do you want them to walk around on the flippers? Like, how do you want them to look? It's almost like creating a mascot in a way, but it's a mascot for yourself. So you take that association, you just run with it. Like, for me, I think foxes are cute. I really like them as an animal. I've done a spirit walk and I was guided by a fox. So, it's just the animal that I chose. And I wanted them to represent me and my alt self. And I dress in a very kind of goth way. I have a very goth aesthetic when I dress feminine. And so I wanted them to represent that. And so that's why I got the witch's hat, the colored hair, the bustier, massive fur tits, the works, really.
A lot of the fursuits I see the fur is not colors found in nature. Is there any symbolism to that? Like the hanky code, there's symbolism there, or is it just personal preference? I like this color best.
Usually it's personal preference. There are certainly some furries that use the color as a representation that means something to them or means something broader. You certainly have furries that they'll coat themselves in like bisexual flag colors or trans flag colors or something like that. But by and large, I think it's just this is a cool color and I like it.
Gotcha. Cool. What are some of the more common furry animals? What are some of the strangest or most unusual furry animals that you have seen out there?
Oh, well, let's see here. I mean, foxes are all sluts. Let's just put that out there. And I speak from experience. Wolves are very popular. Dogs, cats. The cat girl is very much a meme. I've seen deer, fawns. Actually, at Conference, the 1989 one, the very first one, I believe there was that was a fawn that was dressed up, which is very unique. But I've seen mice. I want to say like there are zebras that I've seen. Some of the wildest ones, though, are like whenever you get someone who is like more into dragons or they're scalies, they're into lizards, because then you get into sometimes people will do body modification where they'll like split their tongue into stuff like that. Like that's really out there and wild to me. I don't know if I've ever seen anything that's like strange where it's haunted my dreams.
Goodness, I hope not.
But I've definitely seen some stuff that I'm like, holy shit, that's cool. Like, and it extends outward from just normal animals because you've got people who will dress up like Pokemon and they identify with Pokemon, stuff like that. It's all about your freedom of expression. Maybe you want to be a sexy Pikachu.
I mean, that's a thing.
I know I do.
That's a Halloween costume I've seen being sold out there.
That's a Halloween costume I've seen crumpled on the corner floor.
So there are furries out there that aren't mammals.
Oh yeah, for sure. You have so when we're talking about furries, it's kind of the umbrella term for a lot of other subgroups. You have like scalies who are more reptilians, not in the conspiracy theory sense. I fucking wish, but more in just the idea that they represent lizards, dragons, etc. And then you have other kin who they feel this spiritual attachment to the animal rather than it's just part of themselves. It is who they are. It is who they identify with. They are this animal, like they're an antelope and stuff like that. Which is where a lot of misconceptions, like going back to the litter in the classroom, that's where a lot of misconceptions come from. Is other kin, but it's more of a spiritual connection than anything. Let's see here. There are just a ton of subgroups out there for furries, but those are some of the two major ones.
I was gonna say, I think I've seen more folks try out. How do I put this? Different aspects of like their fur persona, or like if they're trying to figure out like, is something going to work for them when they're creating like their fursuit, or if they're, trying to figure out this, that, or whatever. What was it? Like they'll try it out at like non-furry places such as like a run fair, because they're like, okay, let's see if this is going to work, because if I can hang with a run fair all day, then I'm pretty certain I can hang at a convention for the entire weekend, or this is going to work and this is going to feel good, and does it match what I'm trying to portray out there.
Yeah, which is honestly another parallel is that journey.
Sure.
You know, I'm certainly not the same person in kink that I was when I started.
I should hope not. No offense, but you know, we're all supposed to learn and grow.
No, yeah, for sure. No, like, look, that person, I don't know who they are.
Sure.
But I'm not them anymore. But much like furries, like they evolve over time. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're pretty happy with who they are and who their fursona represents. But even then, styles change. You know, I'm sure if I made a fursona back in the early 2000s, they would have been wearing some Jinkos.
That's a name brand I haven't heard in a while.
Man, bring back Jinkos. I'm saying.
No.
Those are comfy. I could fit an entire Super Nintendo in my pants. That's where I want to be. This is why we failed as a society. We no longer make huge pants.
Look, you weren't just fitting an entire Super Nintendo in there. You could fit, like, you know, Super Nintendo, Xbox, and 3 of your friends, at least.
It's true. I could fit a small man in there, which is what I need sometimes. I just need a small person to fit in my pants.
As far as the fursuits go with furries, most of them are custom made, correct? I mean, there's not like a catalog to go out there and buy yourself a fursuit, is there?
I think there are some websites that are dedicated to creating or renting out fursuits. There are certainly a lot of artists out there, especially these days, who you can commission to make the suits. If you don't want to go that route and you're feeling adventurous, of course, you can make your own. And I know that there are places like Michael's and such where you can get foam that you can use to build the heads and the paws and whatever else you need. There is a lot of skill and love that is involved whenever you're talking about fursuits, because it's definitely a thing that they wear all day. And that's for the full suit, right?
Right.
And you've also got like cooling vests that they wear underneath. They need a handler sometimes to make sure they're not going to like ram into somebody, or if someone wants a picture, they can like get a tap on the shoulder or something. It's wild. It's crazy. And just the amount of care that goes into taking care of those suits as well. Because the inside gets boiling to almost.
Oh, yeah.
Like it gets so hot in those things, and you're walking around in a swamp of your own making. You know, you're just human soup inside of this thing.
Yeah, I know that's a kink for somebody somewhere.
For sure. Why would you do something if you didn't enjoy it? And on some level,
Sure.
You know, I'm sure there's like masochist furs that are like, I'm not going to wear my cooling vest today. I've been such a naughty little princess.
Wait, pardon me. I do have to share before I forget, and this goes too far. The best thing that I got to do of helping a friend with making their fursuit wasn't even me making their fursuit. It was making them into one of the mannequin dummies that you use to, like a seamstress would use in order to create what it's going to do to match their body using duct tape. So I got to do the mummification part prior to them making
that's awesome.
their fursuit. So I'm like...
That is so awesome.
I'm like, dude, I am totally completely like, honey, I told my friend, I'm like, she's like, do you want to help me make another one? I'm like, honey, I am all down for any time that you want to make one of those again. You just tell me, I will happily wrap your ass in duct tape.
Yeah, you tell me when and where. I am going to show up pre-aroused.
I'm like, we will be good.
Yeah, we're gonna be solid. Don't you worry, hon. No, but I mean there is some. That's the other thing is with the suits is that in some cases there can be a lot of kind of ritual that goes into them, right?
Sure.
by grooming them, making sure they're good to go. They look really nice. There's a lot that kind of goes into it.
So my friend who she is very much a furry was talking about that. She had seen a suit that was for sale somewhere, Facebook Marketplace, something or another like that. And the person had put some love into it. And she had made the comment that it looked odd. And then coming to find out that, like, there's typically a look that most furries are going for with their fursuits, which was, like, trimming up the fur to make it still look soft, but actually, like, clean cut. Is that a thing?
That I don't know.
Okay.
That could be. And it could also just be it's more breathable.
Okay. And kind of like a personal preference.
Kind of. I think it is. I think it's something like that would be a personal preference. It's also just, a matter of self-expression.
Okay.
Just how do you perceive the character? Are they going to be this fuzzy? Are they going to be more like trimmed down?
So kind of like a preference between, and forgive me, but this is just the easiest way that my brain kind of associates, kind of like a short-haired versus long-haired cat.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Your best guess, what does the average fursuit cost?
Oh, God.
That sounds like arm and leg.
Well, probably a small mortgage.
Oh, damn.
So we're talking about handmade items.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That need to be made to certain specifications. If we're talking about a bigger person, if we're talking about, if you want something inside of it that's going to keep you cool, it's an investment. You're easily talking about in something that's into the thousands of dollars. Now, if you're making it yourself, a lot of that gets cut out.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to buy the materials and whatnot. And you also need to make sure that it's going to stand up to the heat of your own body, as well as the heat that is on the outside. But I think you're still looking at about $1,000 easily. For a full suit. Now, not everyone goes for the full suit. Some people, they're just cool with making a head and then just putting on a maid's costume. That's all they need.
Sure.
But you also don't really need the full suit. You can
Sure.
just go out there with ears and a tail, and there you go. You are your character.
There you go. So when you have your head or like even a full suit, curiosity, inquiring minds, how in the ever-living daylights do you clean the inside of it?
Carefully.
Fair enough.
I've heard things from they are scrubbed with bleach.
Oh.
I've heard magic erasers work great. There have been people who they will put mothballs in them, air freshener, like a whole ass air freshener in them. Just stuff like that black ice in there. You're good to go. Smells like you're driving off a cheap lot. I've heard various things, just soap and water, like gently rinsing and making sure it air dries. There's a variety of ways that you can clean them. I don't think there's any one way that works the best. It's just depending on how clean do you really want it to be. Are you okay with, it being clean enough where it doesn't stink if you get too close to someone? Do you want to make sure that it doesn't grow fungus? Like, what's your over under on this one?
I mean, fair. I guess it's more of like, extending the life of your suit, because especially if you invest that much into it and that's your persona, and where you're able to live your authentic and express your authentic self, you want to keep that for as long as possible. So it was just curiosity of like, how do you work to extend the life of things?
Sure. But there's also the question of, does the suit evolve?
Oh, okay.
Like, do you replace parts with other parts? You know, not to get into a furry of Theseus argument.
Oh, you're allowed to.
But,
it's okay.
you know, I've known people for whom whenever they're building a suit, they do it piece by piece. And as time goes on, sometimes those pieces get replaced because they know they can do better.
That makes sense too.
They can make something better. They can mold a nose to look a lot better. A lot of times fursuits they get worn for maybe 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
And then there's some change to it. Like something gets replaced, the inside of it gets replaced or something like that.
Okay. That absolutely makes sense. And it's just a different perspective for me, only because, you know, as a leather person, you don't think of it that way. It's care for your leathers for as long as, you know, humanly possible until literally they either, like, you know, disintegrate because, well, leather eventually will, or you are passing it on to, you know, the next person as gifted leather, if that's so how you so choose, or, you know, however that may be. Yeah. So it just a different perspective.
You can pass fursuits on to others who want them, but because of the custom-made nature of them, usually it's difficult to, especially if you're depending on body sizes. If you find someone who's got a pretty similar frame to yours, you can probably get away with it. I kind of see it as though I don't know how much I would want to walk around in a suit that someone else has worn for that long.
Unless that's part of your kink.
You know, I guess like, you know, I'm down to swap fluids, but I think I draw the line in some cases.
That's fair.
The only relatable experience I have is in college. I was very, very briefly a frog mascot for a bar. And yes, those costumes were ungodly hot, but the only thing worse than that was getting caught outside in the rain in those.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I can only imagine. And I sometimes it makes me think of like Disney costumes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, y'all make me think about, like, you know, turning those suckers inside out and, like, you know, putting them under a UV light for the next 12 hours.
I mean, whatever gets you by.
Well,
whatever keeps the nightmares at bay.
I mean, the rain was the worst because you couldn't, like, throw it in the dryer afterwards. You just had to hang it and let it air out inside.
Right.
Oy.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
No.
Pretty sure I got beer dumped on me a few times, too, but I couldn't tell through the fur.
Probably.
The fur of the frog.
Anything, it would have just absorbed.
Yeah.
The very first individual that I ever met, so I met them on a pony play weekend, and they wanted to introduce not their pony persona, but their donkey persona, which happened to be a furry. And their name was Jack. It was Jack the donkey.
So they were jackass.
Yes, they were jackass.
Okay.
And I found it interesting that because I had never met anyone who had a persona like that, and you know, met them in their jackass persona, their donkey persona, and they explained to us that they were nonverbal, and it took them some time to be off on their own to get into a headspace before they were able to put on their fursuit and their head and be Jack. And I just found that rather fascinating, and part of me was like, I wonder how many other people, you know, have to do that, or some people are just like, nope, I zip up and I put my head on and boom, I'm just right there. And I get it varies from person to person, but
It does, definitely. I feel like you definitely, for a lot of people, this is just an aspect of themselves, so there's not a lot of hyping up, right?
sure.
But yeah, no, for some, it's a completely different individual, and they need to really focus and get in that headspace.
I mean, at the same time, it also sounds, even to focus to get into that headspace allows them a different type of freedom that seems to be okay, because they're in their suit and in this other aspect of themselves that they might not normally allow themselves to go to at other times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, before we move on to the part of the show we like to call Inside the Kinkster Studio, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know about furries?
Hug your local furry and take care of them. Pet them if they want it. But, they are people just like us. They've just got a little bit more hair on them. So, just be cool. A lot of them are younger people, and especially if they come to events like this, they've learned a lot of things online. Don't discriminate just because they're young. They've grown up in a way that they might know more than you think they do. Sure, they haven't had the physical experience, but the mental experience is most likely there, and they've had a lot of time and opportunity to understand themselves.
Gotcha. Well, that's been some great information on furries. But now we come to the part of the show where we get to know you a little bit better in our own unique, irreverent, and slightly bratty way. Are you game?
All right.
All right.
I'm a Pisces, and anal is a plus.
Sweet. Also, side quest, before I forget, when you come across a furry, always offer them water if they are completely in their suit.
Oh, for God's sake, please do.
Make sure it's ice cold.
Oh, yeah.
I have learned that from a couple folks that, while they are trying to keep the magic of everything, sometimes being able to have a quiet space to be able to remove their head and get some water. Oh my gosh.
There's really something to be said about whenever you're at a convention and that sultry wolf woman that you've been stalking for a while takes their head off and lights up a cigarette, and they're just the burliest man alive.
Surprise!
And I'm still interested.
Which is even better.
How deep does that fur trail go?
Yes.
So, first question. Who was your first ever celebrity crush?
Probably Mara Wilson. Matilda, for sure. We were both kind of the same age, and I was like, that's a really cute girl.
Fair enough. What is something that you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your journey?
Don't trust anyone over 30.
Oh, well, shit.
What is your secret origin story into kink?
I really, really liked wrestling. Something about sweaty men and women grappling each other and binding each other in various ways. Really sank into me. And then I learned to masturbate.
Fair.
That works.
But I get the whole pro wrestling thing. I am working on a class called Everything I Need to Know About Kink I Learned from Professional Wrestling. Skimpy outfits, how to hit each other.
Exactly. It's so, and how to sell that hit. Like, there's so much there. Like, sometimes I want to be kayfabe in the bedroom. I'm just saying.
And, especially the outfits like Demolition used to wear.
Oh my God. Listen, I back in the Attitude Era. What was it? China, I think was her name, the eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah.
I think I have millions of children were lost into a sock because of that woman.
Wow.
What? There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm just saying. There was something about a powerful woman, and I was like, oh, I see how I feel now.
That's very fair.
You're turning 4 shades of red, so I'm going to guess that hit very, very close to home for you.
China did porn.
Yes.
She did. She did. She did. One night in China. I'm just saying, like, the moment I saw that, I went to the nearest computer, and then I got expelled from school.
Oh, you needed to know my friend from college who took a social deviance class and got a pass from their professor to be able to look up porn.
Oh,
Legit.
man.
Was allowed to look up porn for college credits.
I should have told him. It was for research purposes.
That's exactly it.
My dick was in my hand, though. I don't know if they would have bought it.
Ew, that's a whole nother thing.
I swear, this is for research.
Well then,
researching how many times I can do this.
Well then, speaking of porn, what's the most unique combination of words that you have put together in your porn search?
Let's see here. Betty White, massive cock.
I asked.
You asked. That sentence did not end where I thought it was going to end.
What did you think?
It rarely does.
What is one thing you'll never do again?
I don't know. I was going to say 8 guys at the same time, but I kind of want to do that again. Something I never do again. Probably vote Republican.
That's very fair.
Yep. I'm like, doing 8 guys again? Man, that sounds like, a really good time. So
that was going to be the joke answer, but then I'm like, no, I would definitely do that.
What's something people would be surprised to know about you that you're willing to share, of course?
Something that they'd be surprised to know. I don't know at this point. I feel like I've said. I feel like I have no idea. I'm kind of an open book. Something that people might be surprised to know about me. I've delivered a child.
You got stuck in an elevator like in a sitcom?
Okay, legitimately, it was an elevator.
Oh, shit.
All right, it was an elevator. Okay,
yeah.
May I tell the story?
Absolutely. You have
Story
to.
time.
All right. Okay, one fine day in the Army, I used to be a combat medic, and I worked in the clinic at Fort Sill. For whatever ungodly fucking reason, they decided that OB should be on the 3rd floor.
Because that's brilliant.
And this woman gets on the elevator, super fucking pregnant, okay? She has already had her water broken. She is not doing great, but she was there for a routine checkup, and they couldn't go to the ER.
Oh, jeez.
She gets on the elevator. I'm just trying to go up to the 2nd floor with a specimen to go take to the lab. And then she all of a sudden goes, oh, fuck, and braces herself against the walls of the elevator. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I forgot my plunger at home.
Gosh.
So she sinks down to the floor, and I'm like, ma'am, I'm a medic. I know what to do. And so after I got done pissing myself, I took my top off and I set it down underneath her and I said, I'm going to need you to remove your pants.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did, and her husband's there holding her, and that child is ready.
Oh.
That is like part of the head is coming out, and I'm like, fuck. I was really hoping. Is there a way for me to push you back in so we can just not do this today?
No.
and so I put my hand on the head because I don't want it to. I don't know how many kids she's had before because explosive birth is a thing, and the one thing they tell you not to do is to drop the baby. So I'm trying to guide this little fucker out, and the elevator is open at this point. And I tell the husband, "Please go, run, please tell them." What's happening here? We've got the elevator is held there. We've hit the alarm. A brigade of nurses come down the way with an OB kit, the whole thing. Meanwhile, I've got half a child coming out of her and she is screaming her head off. I'm screaming my head off. Everyone's panicking, but it was a smooth birth.
Well, that's a positive.
As soon as the head rotated and the shoulders started coming out, it popped right out. It popped out. It's screaming. It's crying. It's great. Everything's wonderful. We clamp it. I let the nurses take over. The mom is ready to go. Oh God, what am I thinking? The placenta has come out. Like, everything's great. As soon as they go down the hallway, I'm standing there, blood and shit all over my uniform top. I've still got a urine sample in my pocket that I need to deliver. And I'm standing there staring at my uniform top that is ruined. It's got amniotic fluid and crap and blood all over it. I'm just like, okay, well, I'm done for the day. I went to the second floor. I dropped things off. I went back downstairs to the clinic where I worked, and I went to my sergeant. He says, "What the fuck happened to you?"
Well.
And I said, "I'm going home."
Yeah.
He said, "Is everyone alive?" And I said, "Barely." At least 3 of us are okay. The 4th, questionable.
And that's why I'm going home.
I had to explain. That's why I'm going home. I need to go have a long think about my life choices that have led me to this. My life is a goddamn cartoon.
Did they name the kid after you?
I hope not. I really hope they named him like Second Floor or something like that.
And here I am going, wow, you're really lucky that, y'all had the presence of mind to stop the elevator and not ride it up and down the different floors.
Could you imagine some poor person trying to get on the elevator? Like, I gotta go to the pharmacy.
Nope, this one's full.
Yeah, sorry. You got to take the next one, dog. Hope you don't need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you gotta wait. Use the stairs. Sorry.
Yeah. It already smells like someone went to the bathroom in here, so don't worry about it.
I'm glad it all, ended well.
Oh, yeah. It ended okay. Sometimes I wonder how they're doing and if they tell the same story. Like, there was this weirdo that was there in uniform and he delivered a kid for us.
I'm going to go with yes.
I wish he would have stopped screaming. Yeah, he screamed more than the baby and the mother combined. All that crying? Come on, man. Some decorum, at least.
Who would play you in a movie based on your life, and what's the name of the movie?
John Goodman. And the name of the movie is probably something like Big Balls, Little Problem. That's a terrible joke, but I'm sticking with it. Sticking by my guns on that one. That was the best I could do under pressure. If you gave me a lead up, I would probably come up with something better, but you know what? Here we are. I'm sure John Goodman is hung, but he's going to need a prosthetic in the movie.
Oh, what's the worst fashion decision you've ever made?
Oh, fuck. Anything having to do with stilettos. Look, I am 6'3", and over 300 pounds, I feel like I'm drilling for oil anytime I'm out in stilettos. They need to be chunky heels. Otherwise, I'm just a gorilla. Just drilling holes in the earth.
I immediately pictured you in stilettos wearing the Jinkos from earlier.
Yeah? You like what you see? I mean, hey, if this is what you want, we can make this happen, big boy. I'm just saying, You want to? I still got my disc, man. I can pull that out too. Do that with like one of those shirts that Guy Fieri wears. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the bowling shirts.
Yeah, absolutely. With all the flames on it.
And here I am going, look, I'm just going to be jealous that, you can wear and walk in stilettos because I'm only 5'3", and I take one step and fall over like, an awkward baby giraffe.
See, that's how I am in stilettos. I can wear big heels, but they got to be chunky ones. They got to be as chunky as I am. Stilettos, can't do it. I'm pretty sure I twisted mine and everyone else's ankle the first time I did it. Like my neighbor was suddenly like, what the fuck? When I tried.
I mean, that's fair.
All right, time for the reverse Uno. You get to ask us any question you want. The only catch is nobody can have asked us it already.
Okay. Marry, fuck, kill. Harriet Tubman, Cthulhu, and Timothy Chalamet.
Actually, in that order for me.
Oh. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I can respect it.
You know what? For whatever reason, I just think Harriet Tubman would be crazy in bed.
Oh, for sure. Certified fucking freak.
What if you're married? You can still still have the freak in the bed.
But that's not how the game works.
I understand. I make my own rules on that. So.
Final two questions.
What's your favorite curse word?
Fuck if I know.
And then my favorite question to ask, if you had to have sex with a Muppet, which Muppet would it be and why?
Gonzo. Gonzo is the freakiest Muppet that exists. but he is also a gentleman.
He is.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to know how to treat you afterwards. You're going to do some weird shit.
And it's
like you're going to do some definite weird shit.
And it's going to involve a
but it's gonna be
chicken.
Respectful. Oh, for sure. It's going to involve a chicken. If you're not into cloaca, I don't know what to tell you.
Guess you're missing out.
But you know what? He's going to stroke my hair afterwards. Call me his little angel. Give me a little kiss on the forehead. And I'm for it.
On that note, if somebody wants to contact you or follow you on social media, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do that is going to be my Fet Life. You can find me at FoxxyLeigh, Leigh. Definitely follow me there. If you want to contact me, throw some DMs my way. Feel free to slide right in there. It's lubed and ready.
That sounds amazing. Yay!
Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you.
Loved learning about furries and loved having you as a guest on here. For our listeners, upcoming SINagogue in-person and virtual classes on Perfect Strangers, Scene Negotiation, at Cons and Dungeons, Electric Mayhem 1, Electroplay with the Violet Wand, Electric Mayhem 2, Electroplay Beyond the Violet Wand. All these classes coming up. See our website for details and so on. But remember, your kinks are nothing to be ashamed of, unless, of course, you have a humiliation fetish, in which case you should be very, very ashamed, you dirty little pervert. But that's it. That's our show. Say goodnight, little bit.
Good night, little bit.
SINagogue hosts and guests are subject matter experts but are not the expert. We believe that, outside of violating consent, there is no wrong way to do kink, except to think your way is the only way. This show is presented from a RAC, risk-aware consensual kink point of view, and not SSC, safe, sane, consensual, because every individual's definition of safe is different based on their own risk profile. The use of the word safe on this show fits our definition of safe, and that does not have to be your definition. Opinions expressed by guests on the show are those of the person expressing the opinion, not of the show.
Follow us on Facebook, FetLife, Blue Sky, YouTube, Etsy, Twitter, and Tumblr as SINagogue BDSM and as SINagogue Kink on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. If you learned something or just enjoyed this podcast, consider making a donation via PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Patreon, or Ko-fi, username SINagogue, or find links to all of those on our website, SINagogueBDSM.com. Remember, that's SINagogue with an I. Also on the website, links to past episodes, upcoming classes, book us as educators, shop our store, and more.
Just a reminder, we try to make our content as inclusive as possible, regardless of gender, orientation, role in the lifestyle, etc. But we do inherently speak from our own point of view. For the most part, substitute our identity with your own to make it work. We want to know when we make a mistake, so we can learn and grow from those mistakes. So if you feel like we did say something that is genuinely offensive, we encourage you to let us know. Reach out to us with your questions, comments, or concerns via our website or call us at 469-269-0403.
Brought to you today by the letters and the number.
San Diego High School Football Room!